Welcome back, folks, to another video. We are doing it on just like a little overview of my recent two top 8s in the PTQ with this list in Pioneer. I think this is a pretty good list to talk about, especially with the new announcement with the Pro Tour being Pioneer. And this is probably I don't know Pioneer very well, but I do know this deck list pretty well and kind of like how the matchups typically play out. And I thought I'd just do like a little rundown of this and talk about my, obviously two PTQ top 8s, which is like, 250 and like 180 people. And the list felt very, very good. And I just kind of want to talk about how to sideboard, what's important each matchup, at least the matchups that I have played and experienced and know what to do. And yeah, so let's talk about the matchups that are, what your plans are. So obviously our worst matchup by far is Lotus Field. So main deck, basically you can't do anything. I mean, you have to get pretty darn lucky. You need to have a pretty sweet curve out of like Thoughtseize on one or maybe not on one, depending. Like basically turn one Thoughtseize and then you need to pressure. Like we're not, you know, interactive enough, or we don't have counter spells. Like there's literally nothing we can do other than Thoughtseize, and we only have 4 in the deck. So really, that is by far our worst matchup. It gets a lot better post board, but it's still not like terrific. We have 3 Damping Spheres, which we always bring in because this card is fantastic against them. We have the Duresses, which are, fine. Go Blank, which is, it's better than what we have, and then K Command. Like these are not great options, but we can't just have all of our cards in the sideboard be, against them. So then we just take out Blood Chief's Thirst, Fatal Push, and then this is where it gets a little bit more difficult, in my opinion. Cletus isn't great, obviously, so we can take out the Cletus, no problem there. And then like on this last one, like Dreadbore is not horrible. They are Ugin deck. Typically, if they resolve an Ugin, you're fucked anyways. So it kind of is like, do you want 2 Dreadbore? Do you want 1? I think another fine option is like, a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, the Kiki card. It's like, it's fine. It's serviceable. It's not amazing, but it's also okay. And then like you could also trim a Planeswalker because it's not about that really. You just want to kill them before they can do anything. So basically that's how that matchup is. It's really fixated around, these cards that almost don't really do that much in the main deck. You just need to pressure them and just hope that you get there. And then sideboard, we have a pretty clean swap. We have 9 cards that come out or in. And then did I miss something? Where did how did I do this? Oh, I guess I had 1 extra. So I don't know. Oh, because I didn't take out the Dreadbore. So I was like kind of confused. It's like, oh, okay, well, there it is. There it is. And then for the next matchup, blue-white control, most popular deck in the format, I think. We have a really clean sideboard for this one. But main deck, basically, you just gotta resolve Fable. This is like the best card in the matchup by far. Like just try and resolve this card. It allows you to get rid of your Fatal Pushes, which are very bad, and your Cletuses, which are not very great. Cletus is definitely better than Push, and like sometimes Push is okay, but basically it revolves around Fable and Planeswalkers, and then like a secondary Croxa. But this is not the best Croxa deck in the world. We don't fill out the yard too quickly, but it's definitely a card that can win you the late game. It's a 2-for-1. And I don't know, basically you just want to resolve a Planeswalker, you want to get a Fable on the board, or you want to have it be a Croxa game. One or the other, and you want to save your Thoughtseizes for important turns. And then when it comes to sideboarding, we take out the pushes, which are pretty bad. Kalitas, it doesn't do much in non-creature matchups. So Lotus Field and, Lotus Field and Blue-White Control, they come out. Then we bring in our Go Blanks, Duresses, like pretty much the same board except no Damping Sphere. Like the same board plan against Lotus Field. So that's a pretty good like clean swap. And then on to like the, probably like the tertiary, like there are 3 really popular decks in the meta. It is blue white, Lotus Field, and the Winoda decks. So Winoda is a very I think the best reason to be on this is we are really good against 2 of the top 3 decks. We are really good against blue white control because we have all these creature lands, which I forgot to mention. These creature lands are super important. You want to prioritize keeping these around and playing around their March of the Multitudes, or March of whatever it is, March of Otherworldly Light. March of Multitudes is definitely a different card that's a blast from the past. But basically, these are very important. Also, the, Castle Lochthwain and Takanuma / Sokazun, those are really important. But on to the, Winota matchup. So main board, I mean, obviously you never know like game one what you're up against, but things that are important to know about, we are a very hard deck to turn on Revolt. So there are a few ways to do that. Blood Tithe Harvester with blood tokens, that is a important way. And I'm talking about Revolt purely because of Winoda being a 4 CMC card, and Fatal Push answers it very cleanly. So Blood Tithe Harvester is a way to crack a blood token. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, the goblin that it makes a treasure token, which is another way to trigger Revolt. And then lastly, on their turn specifically, Kalidas sacking a vampire or zombie is another way. I mean, that takes 4 mana, but we still take that trade. As for on our turn, we also have, Cruxa, you can, like, I don't know, minus Chandra, which, like, sometimes is good enough if they play it out by itself or they whiff or something. But we also have, like, Bloodchief's Thirst and Dreadbore. But it, like, again, basically this revolves around either thought seizing their Winoda or minimizing their board to the point where the Winoda just doesn't do anything ever. And good cards in the matchup. Kalidas obviously is a powerhouse, is really good against what's it called? The Voice of Resurgence, not allowing it to trigger, making a 2-for-1. Bone Crusher Giant, obviously this card is a stud in like every matchup. It's always pretty decent. You almost never cut this card. Just it's always a 2-for-1. Blood Tithe Harvester is okay, but, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Graveyard Trespasser is really good. Kroxa is something that I still don't know if I'm, like, strong or, for or against. I don't really know. And then, obviously, the Planeswalkers are great. So, I mean, basically, you want to revolve this matchup around being, a control deck against them, but, obviously you don't have counter spells. Just try and kill everything, and know that turn 1, always kill the bird. Trust me, I've let it survive. Always kill the bird. They have Fable. They have so many things. Also, cards you need to worry about from their deck that aren't Winoda. You need to know how to navigate around the Ezekiel's Chariot, and that card is almost more important to Thoughtseize than Winoda itself, because that card is fucking insane. It's really good against us, and it's basically their Bone Crusher Giant, except it's better than Bone Crusher Giant because it's more than a 2-for-1. It feels like it's like a 5-for-1 every time. And so basically fixating on that card, and because that card's a lot less manageable than Winoda is, because you can kill all their threats, but you can't, having to spend 2 removal spells on the 2 cat tokens when you could have just, instead of thought seizing the Winoda, you could just thought seize the Chariot. Then pretty much it's like, okay, then I can use those removal spells on Winoda. And most removal spells in this deck do kill Winoda. The only ones that really don't is just Bone Crusher Giant and, hit or miss Fatal Push. Because it is kind of difficult to turn Revolt on in this deck, so I do acknowledge that, and I've been thinking about adding, some, Fabled passages and whatnot, but I just don't know if the mana base can really, afford that. But, I think it's a pretty close call. So, as for the mirror, I mean, I didn't say I had a sideboard. Sorry. You just want all of these cards. These 6 right here: Rave, Enfeeblement, Feed the Swarm, and Legion's End. KK doesn't do enough. Go Blank is, obviously not for this matchup. And then typically cards that I get rid of, I don't like Fable in this matchup. I take all of those out because, they're hit or miss. Sometimes, Kalidas is also a card that on the draw, I kind of like trimming one. It's kind of close because I feel like Kroxa is just worse in that slot. But also, Blood Tithe Harvester. We have a lot of medium cards in this matchup. So, I would totally recommend cutting all the Fables. I just think this card doesn't do enough. But, as for, I think it's personal preference. You can trim a Kalidas, a Kroxa, or a Blood Tithe. You can do, small trims. I don't think I would get rid of any of the removal spells, obviously. I think this is all about just, controlling their board. Never get rid of the Planeswalkers. They are just insanely good in this matchup because you're trying to 1-for-1 until the very end, and then you're just trying to pull ahead with something, a little bit, which is why I don't love trimming Kroxa, because that can almost act as a Planeswalker, as a pull ahead card, whereas Kalidas is only good once you have the removal in your hand already. So this card is just a little weird, right? It's obviously very good in the matchup, but it's kind of awkward in the same sense because it's just hit or miss a little strange. So I do recommend thinking about cutting Kalidas, thinking about cutting Kroxa, thinking about Blood Tithe Harvester, Obviously, Graveyard. This is Graveyard Trespasser. You never cut this card. This card's fucking insane. If you don't play Pioneer, this card's absurd. Absolutely absurd. And then let's talk about the mirror match. The mirror match, I mean, it's a mirror match. Things that are important in the sideboard. I mean, how to play it. It's like, basically, you want to just have as many 2-for-1s. Fable is great. Bone Crusher, again, almost everything in this deck's great. Things you want to prioritize. Planeswalkers, making sure to time your Kalitas better. Graveyard Trespasser, just slam it whenever you can. This card just, they just can't deal with it. Like, it's always a 2-for-1. It's fantastic. So, basically, if you know how to play a mid-range mirror, that's important. Creature lands are also super important. So, you gotta know that your utility lands are super duper important in any mid-range and long matchup. So that's why we run 6 utility lands, or really more like 8 utility lands in our 24 land deck. We have 8 utility lands. Sideboarding for the mirror. You want to bring in K commands. I think that's really about it. You could bring in Go Blanks, I think, but I don't know. It depends on like how you want to decide, like how many number of Thoughtseizes you want to take out. I like having a few numbers, but because like if you take out the Thoughtseizes, you're bringing in Go Blanks, I think, or Duress, and at that point, why would you just not want it to be the Thoughtseizes? So I just like bringing in 2K commands and just making that clean swap of 2 for 2. And because like all your other options are kind of like the same thing. Like Go Blank is bad in the late game, but so is Thoughtseize, but Thoughtseize is easier, more mana efficient. You can go like double spell. So I don't know. I think it's kind of like hit or miss the same thing, but I like K command over Thoughtseize. And then I think the last deck that I want to talk about is the Rakdos Sacrifice list, and that is a tough matchup. Like holy shit. I am still not very great at that matchup because I lost it twice and I've only played it twice, but from my experience, the card that matters in that matchup is Mayhem Devil and Anvil. Those are the literal only 2 cards that matter. You don't really care about the cat loop, like it's annoying, but you can deal with it. And honestly, there is not that much we can do. They're just lower to the ground. Our removal spells don't really line up that great. Like Bone Crusher Giant does not kill anything really. Fatal Push is like meh, doesn't really kill Mayhem Devil because again we're very bad at triggering Revolt in this deck. All of our other removal spells are Sorcery Speed. Like Fable of the Mirror Breaker is like okay. Graveyard Trespasser again, just a fantastic card always. Kalitas is like by far the best card we have, but we only have 2 copies, and you can't just aggressively mulligan just to Kalitas because if they have that Fatal Push, you're just fucked. So main deck, it's just kind of hard. I don't really know how to manage that matchup. I think it's just you need some Thoughtseizes main board to have a chance. And like as for post board, even that's a little difficult. Like K command's great because it deals with Anvil, Oven, stuff like that. I think Go Blank's fine. Just like it's a nice 2-for-1, can exile their benefit cats in it. Legion's End I think is also fine, but like it's really awkward. And then like Feed the Swarm I like just because it kills Mayhem Devil. But if that deck like grows in popularity, which I mean based on like what I've seen, everyone's like loving that deck. I think our options are gonna be changing from Fatal. Like we're gonna have to be playing some number of actual Doomblade effects for Mayhem Devil, and then Hitasugu Consumes All is a pretty sweet card. That could almost be like a replacement for probably Legion's End, but I still really like Legion's End. I'm not sure where you would have to go if you want to make that matchup favorable. Obviously, Kalitas is really good, so more Kalitases could always help. But even like it's really difficult to explain in words how that matchup feels because sometimes you are, like pretty far ahead, and then they just top deck an Anvil, or like Anvil buys them a lot of time against Kalitas, especially if they have 2. If they have 2 Anvils, Kalitas literally just does nothing. And like you can never get the lifelink. Like it's a really awkward matchup. Honestly, even like Artifact Hate would be a good solution, but I'm not too familiar with. I guess you could be playing Abrade. Abrade could be a pretty good option because it can kill Oven Anvil and Mayhem Devil. So that honestly might be a good solution, honestly, over the Legion's Ends and stuff like that. Something I hadn't thought about until making this video, so that might be a good option. So I hope this helped. I really like this deck. I think if you're trying to get into Pioneer, this is probably the best mid-range deck for you. You could play like Nibdolite and stuff like that, but this deck feels very clean. It's good against a lot of stuff. You know, obviously mid-range, you know, you always try and get that 50-50 matchups and stuff. And I think this deck is pretty good against the top decks. Like, it's pretty good against Winoda. It's pretty good against blue-white. I lost in the first PTQ. I lost to blue-white twice, and I think that was just with the unfamiliarity of how that matchup goes. And then second PTQ, I like 3-0'd, sweep them, and it didn't feel close. It was like 2-0, 2-0, 2-0. I think it's a pretty clean, easy matchup. Winoda it's like, I would say Winoda's closer than blue-white control because Winoda just it kind of has that blue-red Murktide feel in Modern. Like, it's still a deck, like, you can have a good matchup, but it can still just come out of nowhere and just, like, absolutely demolish you. Like, it's not unlosable. You just need to be pretty careful. Like, Raven Feebleman is, like, the card you need for that matchup. The card is fantastic there. And then, like, obviously Feed the Swarm and stuff, like, other stuff. Like, you just need these answers in that matchup, and you kind of have to, like, prioritize making sure Winoda doesn't trigger, and also knowing that you can't let them go too late, because then they'll start casting their Tovalars and their Kinriths, so Kingkin. But, you know, I think this is a great place to be if you're trying to get into Pioneer. Obviously, there's a new announcement, so I thought I'd do this little deck overview and talk about the two PTQ top 8s, which honestly was a lot of fun. We lost in the second PTQ. Our two losses were to the Anvil deck and Lotus Field, which, as I said, I think those are bad matchups. I honestly almost want to just, like, cut the Damping Spheres and just accept that if we get paired up against Lotus, like, we're kind of just fucked. But that's not a great mid-range mentality, I don't think. But it's just like one of those, like, decks. You just can't beat that deck. There's nothing you can really do against Lotus Field. Like, Damping Sphere is good, but there's only 3 of them. So I don't know. I've been thinking about just cutting the Damping Spheres. But anyways, folks, I really do appreciate you all watching. I hope you all like this, like, little, you know, kind of like deck techy stuff. If you don't, let me know. If you do, let me know in the comments. I really would appreciate it. Hopefully, if you do like it, we can do some more on, you know, maybe the rock and kind of do like an overview. I know a lot of people like the, you know, more in-depth stuff like articles people have asked, and I'm sorry. I am very bad at writing, and I'm also a college student, so I kind of am busy with all this stuff, and I have YouTube. Like, there's a lot of stuff I have to do. I have a lot of things personally that I have to do. So I don't really have time to do articles. I mean, it takes a lot more time than making a video. So if you all are more interested in seeing these types of videos at some point, be more than willing to make them. It doesn't take too long, and, you know, it's pretty fun to do. Just talk about a deck list and talk about, like, my thoughts about it. And if you want to know about more matchups, or if you want to, you know, have like a part 2 of this video, also let me know. So anyways, folks, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. See y'all.